For Jill, mother of twin daughters aged 18, living in her 3-bedroom house in Stockport in the UK was an enjoyable one. That is, until the paranormal came a-calling. The dark nights had drawn in quickly. It was November the 26th, 1998, when researcher Steve Mearer from the Scientific Establishment of Parapsychology received word that a family living in Stockport were finding it difficult to live in their home due to consistent paranormal incidents, which included strange voices coming out of the air, ghostly hands grabbing at you in the middle of the night, and objects and items moving about the house. The investigation started by Steve visiting the family and interviewing them and of course assessing the situation, i.e. the severity and frequency of the incidents. The 3-bedroom terraced house was no different than any others in their road, except this house had something dark and mysterious plaguing the family. Jill, mother of 2, told Steve that her youngest of the twins had felt something tapping her on the head and often reported being touched by an invisible hand. This was also confirmed by Julie, Jill's older daughter, who had also experienced the same thing. On many occasions, the room would suddenly plummet in temperature just prior to being touched by something that could not be seen. Strange banging sounds, taps being turned on, appliances regularly breaking down, bulbs jumping out of their fittings only to be found intact on the floor were regularly witnessed. Objects were also found to have been moved throughout the night. For Jill, things had suddenly become a lot more serious when Julie woke in the morning to find marks on her legs. Julie had no recollection of how or where they had come from. As the days followed, the family became more and more nervous after seeing a dark amorphous shape moving about in the house. Keys and important letters turned up in the most unusual places. Houseplants would inexplicably die, and the pet dog was often upset during the night. One particular morning, Julie had heard a noise in her sister's room and went to investigate. She entered the room, expecting to see her sister Michelle, but the room was empty. Julie claimed to have clearly heard the wardrobe doors open and shut and the sound of ornaments being moved around. She noticed that both wardrobe doors were wide open, and the small table with ornaments on it had moved from its usual position about a foot nearer to the window. Such periodic disturbances started to increase in frequency. The family were plagued by the sound of scratching at night, which seemed to emanate from the walls and ceilings. Beds would often shake, accompanied by coldness. Jill, now desperate to get help, confided in a friend who had previously visited the house and thought she saw something at the top of the stairs glaring back at her from the darkness. Days passed, and the family were now suffering from sleepless nights. Jill and the girls had now become used to barricading themselves into the front bedroom together. The nighttime was dreaded by all, and often drove the family to travel to the bathroom together. They longed for sunup, but then incidents started to take place during the day. They were at their wits' end. The girls would often jump up screaming after their backsides were touched or pinched. The girls were generally upset and scared. Jill's dog, a small white Scottish terrier, would often cry out and howl at night, but when Jill tried to take the dog upstairs with them, it simply refused, even to the point of becoming aggressive. There was one particular occasion when the girls had managed to force the dog upstairs, but the terrier scratched madly at the closed bedroom door and would not stop. Fearful of the dog hurting himself on splinters of wood, Jill picked up enough courage to take the dog back downstairs and put him in his kitchen bed. She quickly scooped up the dog and headed downstairs. She found herself stood at the bottom of the stairs outside the lounge. She could see that the lounge door was open, yet she had closed it tight before her earlier so to stop her dog from entering the lounge in a desperate attempt to flee her arms. Petrified, she reached into the dark lounge and switched the light on. At that very moment, Jill heard a strange crackling sound in the lounge, and the lounge bulb suddenly launched itself out of its fixings and across the room. Dropping the dog, she let out a scream and found herself stumbling up the stairs as fast as she could. She reached the bedroom, slammed the door, and put the furniture up against it in a frantic panic. December the 2nd, 1998. It had become regular routine to barricade themselves into the front bedroom at around 7 p.m. before the late hours arrived. On visiting, you could clearly see that the family had spent most of their time in the front bedroom. They had erected a TV in the corner and ran their phone on a cable extension into the bedroom. There was a kettle, milk, crisps and biscuit packets around, accompanied by a bottle of tap water and a couple of torches, just in case the electricity mysteriously went off. They had prepared themselves for all possible outcomes. December the 4th, 1998, 3:10 a.m. All hell breaks loose. Julie could not wait until morning and needed to go to the bathroom. She reluctantly moved the furniture away from the door and opened it. As she peered into the hallway, she saw something truly terrifying. There, on the staircase, stood a large, dark figure. Not moving at first, stood silently with its back up against the staircase wall. When her and the girls caught sight of it, the apparition quickly started to move towards them, stamping its feet upon the remaining 2 or 3 steps and turning towards the front bedroom. Screaming and crying, they slammed the door shut, throwing furniture behind the door, but this time including a single bed, mattress and all. They sat huddled together in the corner of the room, shaking in terror, expecting the door to be kicked open, but nothing. Complete silence. 3:25 a.m. Steve woke to the sound of his telephone ringing. It was Jill, crying down the phone so much he could hardly understand her. She needed help and fast. Steve headed down to the family home and arrived around 3:50 a.m. He walked up the dark path to the house. He could clearly see the upstairs bedroom light on. Just as he got to the front door, he heard his name called. Jill and the girls had opened the bedroom window and were telling him what had happened. He tried desperately to calm them down and asked them to come and open the front door. Too afraid, none of them would open the bedroom door. Steve, trying not to wake the neighbors up, told them he could not help unless he gained access to their home. Again, they were adamant they would not come down to open the front door. It took him a little over 10 minutes to convince them that they would be okay and nothing would happen now he was there. Mindful as to what he had said, Steve was hoping that he wouldn't be wrong. Jill reluctantly grabbed the girls arm in arm and made her way to the bedroom door. It took some time to move the heavy furniture. It seemed so much lighter when they had frantically thrown everything up at the door. In the process of exiting their bedroom, they were putting on every light they could. Steve was hoping in the back of his mind that they would not experience anything on the way. It was a gamble, but one which he needed to take for them to open the front door. The hallway light eventually went on and the front door opened. As he was just about to ask how they were, his conversation was cut short by Jill's arms grabbing hold of him. She gripped him tight in a hug, crying and sobbing. He felt so sorry for them. What they must be going through must be terrifying. He truly began to worry for their well-being. Rushed off to the lounge for countless cups of coffee, Jill told him that they had all seen an apparition. It looked to be at least 6 to 7 feet tall, wide shoulders, and a rather small head for its size. The figure was dark in color, and parts of it you could see through, as if it were transparent. There were no feet and no hands. It was as if the extremities had faded away. Steve tried his best to calm the family down and told them he would do all in his power to help them. The family were being plagued by paranormal incidents, of which most happened at night, but did continue during the day with less severity. Small and large objects would be found to have been moved, items going missing and turning up in odd places. Electrical items would constantly break down, such as, in a 6-month spate, 2 hoovers, a hairdryer, 2 toasters, 2 CD players, 2 irons, 3 video recorders, a dryer and 4 TVs had gone faulty. Strange sounds could be heard regularly, describing as scratching, knocking, banging, crackling and tapping, which were often accompanied by cold areas. The sounds often emanated from the walls or ceilings throughout the house. Strange dark shadows and shapes would be seen to move about, and now an apparition of a dark, tall figure. Julie had complained of strange scratch marks on her legs on several occasions. Beds would shake, blankets started to be pulled off during the night, and flashes of light could often be seen coming from the corners of several rooms. No rational explanation for the disturbances could be found. During a number of investigations carried out at their home, researchers found that their own equipment would often fall faulty. Measuring meters, cameras, and torches would just suddenly and inexplicably die, but strangely worked fine once they had left the building. A number of rooms were plagued by bad odors, the smell of rotten meat. Steve had experienced this himself during a visit on December the 5th, 1998, whilst in the back bedroom. Suddenly, there was an odor that filled the air. To be honest, it kind of took his breath away. It was a horrific smell that left him teary-eyed and on the verge of vomiting. One of the video cameras recorded a number of small flashes of light emanating from the corner of the ceiling in the back bedroom. This occurred 4 times on film during the investigation. December the 6th, 1998. Steve knew he needed to help this family, and it had gone past the need for him to obtain any further data. He searched for someone who may be able to help. In desperation, he contacted a local Methodist church and met with the Reverend Thomas and explained his concerns. The Reverend agreed to help and would visit the family home that week. Steve and 3 other investigators set up a camp for 3 days. During that time, they conducted a thorough investigation of the building. They had now accumulated 102 hours of video surveillance, about 60 hours of audio recordings, and had taken around 100 photographs. Sensor sweeps were carried out every hour or so. Occasional high EMF spikes would inexplicably appear, then drop away. They had also noted at times that the pet dog was acting rather unusually. He would stop and stare at empty walls and corners, as if he was watching something. He ran off into the kitchen on 2 occasions in the same evening and was heard growling. After fixing himself a sandwich, a loaf of bread suddenly launched itself off the worktop and across the kitchen. Steve had even gone to the front door several times due to the front doorbell ringing, only to find no one there. Over the 3 days, Jill and her daughters were plagued by bad dreams and would often sit awake throughout the night. December the 8th, 1998. It was Julie and Michelle's birthday, and Jill had bought them a new CD system as the last one had, like most other equipment, stopped working. It was 1:58 p.m. Julie was on her way downstairs when she heard a deep, rasping voice shout out, "Happy birthday." As she turned, she suddenly felt 2 hands push her. Julie landed at the bottom of the stairs in a heap and screaming. It was obvious she was injured. Julie was helped to the car and Jill rushed her off to hospital. Sometime later, Jill returned with Julie, who had her leg in plaster. She had fractured her ankle. Julie explained that the voice she heard must have come from the new CD system, but on investigation, it was found not to be plugged in. By this time, Jill was now taking sedatives, which had been prescribed by her local doctor. She was a complete wreck, often shaking, and the girls were complaining of regular migraines. December the 9th, 1998. Investigators reported that the downstairs gas fire was mysteriously turned on several times, and the kitchen cooker rings had also been turned on. The strong smell of gas would occasionally fill the air, which prompted regular checks. Fire and cooker knobs were fastened down by strong carpet tape. Steve was now becoming extremely worried. He telephoned the Reverend Thomas and told him what was happening. He too was concerned and agreed to visit the house the following day. December the 10th, 1998. Steve unfortunately could not be there for Reverend Thomas's visit. He was exhausted and needed to rest. He had been awake for 72 hours and was starting to have difficulties concentrating. At 8 p.m. promptly, Reverend Thomas and 4 associates arrived. After a brief interview with Jill and the girls, the Reverend started to carry out a blessing of the property, starting in the kitchen, then the lounge and the dining area. He asked the family to come upstairs with them as he thought the focal point was somewhere up there. Jill and her daughters made their way upstairs. A quietness fell over the house. About half an hour or so they came back downstairs. Reverend Thomas said, "All should be fine now. God has blessed your home." Days passed. Steve kept in regular contact with Jill. There had been no further incidents. In fact, the investigators who attended during the blessing reported a strange calmness that fell over the house. Days turned into weeks, then months. Jill and her family went on to have an enjoyable Christmas with not a single incident taking place. The following year came quickly, and in the spring of 1999 they managed to go away on holiday, and on return their home was still pleasant. Normality had once again befelled the household.